My wife staged the kidnapping of our child to make me look like a monster. Yeah, she looked me in the eye and lied while I ran around like an idiot trying to find our son. But when her messed up plan came to light, I was ready to play her game by my own rules. What I did next brought her to her knees in front of the entire country. My name is Dave. I'm 27, and to be honest, my life until today has been completely ordinary. You know, the usual: wife, kid, a mortgage that's strangling me harder than a hangover after a Friday night out. Basically, a typical family nightmare. Linda, my wife, she's 25, has always been, let's say, a bit odd. I'd say she had some kind of hidden self-destruct button that would sometimes go off, but I chalked it up to parental exhaustion. After all, we have a toddler, Kevin. He's only 2. That's the age when you either sleep standing up or daydream about escaping to Mars. Maybe Linda was dreaming of that, too. One morning, I wake up and, as usual, expect to hear Kevin's screams, the ones that drag me out of bed better than any alarm clock. But nothing. Silence. And that's when it hit me. You know, that moment when your brain goes, what the hell is going on? I stumbled to the nursery thinking, all right, maybe he finally slept through the night. But no way, the crib's empty. And Linda's not there either. Just asterisk, the perfect asterisk way to start the day, right? At first, I didn't freak out. My first thought was, she probably decided to take Kevin for a walk in the park. Linda loved those spur-of-the-moment walks. She was always into those random urges like, oh, let's paint the walls green because I saw it on Instagram. So I didn't worry too much, though this uneasy feeling was starting to gnaw at me. A couple of hours passed, and then I started seriously freaking out. One walk, sure, I get it, but this long? Dude, what the fuck? This isn't like her. I grab my phone and call Linda, and what do I hear? The subscriber is temporarily unavailable. Awesome. Still, I'm not panicking just yet. I call her friends, her mom, even some distant acquaintances. It's like I'm shouting into the void. No one's seen her. Now I feel cold sweat running down my back. What the hell is going on? I start losing it. You know that moment when your brain starts spinning the craziest scenarios. What if she got hit by a car? Maybe she was kidnapped? Or maybe she ran off with Kevin. My mind's racing at full speed, and my heart's pounding like I've just sprinted a marathon. Okay, I've had enough. I run to the nearest police station, sweating like I've just stepped out of a sauna, and file a missing persons report. And that's when the fun really begins. The cops, of course, weren't in any hurry. They showed up an hour later, checked out the house as if they were searching for ghosts. But aside from an empty nursery and my freaked out self, there was nothing. I explain the situation, and they look at me like I'm a lunatic. They're probably thinking, just another guy whose wife left him. Maybe she ditched him. But you know what really hit me? One of the cops, who seemed a bit more experienced, looked at me seriously and said, "Sir, we can't rule out the possibility of a kidnapping." Asterisk kidnapping asterisk, for God's sake. Those words echoed in my head like an electric shock. I was stuck in this nightmare, and no one was coming to save me. At that moment, I realized I was about to go through a hell I couldn't even imagine in my worst nightmares. The next few days, guys, were pure hell. I'd even go as far as to say it was like living in some sort of real-life nightmare, hotter than any fiery pit you could imagine. The police were supposedly working, looking for leads, while I, completely overwhelmed by everything, was giving interviews to the local news. By the way, doing those interviews is absolute bullshit. You sit there in front of a camera, and some guy in a suit tries to drag the emotions out of you while you're hanging on by a thread. I thought the whole thing would end with people feeling bad for me and helping to search for Linda and Kevin, but that's when reality came and slapped me hard. At first, things went as expected. People gave me sympathetic looks. Poor Dave. His wife and kid are missing. He must be going through hell. But the second I appeared on TV, the fairy tale ended. The internet exploded with rumors, and that's when the real show began. Neighbors started whispering behind my back. Coworkers looked at me like I'd stolen their wallets, and strangers on the street could barely hold back from spitting in my direction. What the hell, people? The first thing I saw on social media was some genius commenting, "He definitely killed them. Dave just wanted to get rid of his wife and kid. Screw you." But when that crap started gaining likes, I realized things were about to go downhill fast. Now, I wasn't just the poor guy who'd lost his family. I was a monster, a cold-blooded murderer in the eyes of the whole town. Fantastic. And then, ta-da! I get a call from the police. Gee, Mr. Dave, we need you to come in for questioning. I almost choked on my coffee. Me for questioning? Are you kidding me? I've never committed a crime in my life, and suddenly I'm the prime suspect in the disappearance of my own family. That's when I realized that everything I said and did from that point on would be used against me. It wasn't paranoia. It was just cold, hard reality. So I walk into the police station, and I'm greeted by two detectives straight out of a cheap TV show. One was older, balding, the other younger, and clearly dealing with some inferiority complex. First question, where were you on the day of the disappearance? Like any normal person, I start explaining that I was at home, working, then realized Linda and Kevin were gone, and went to the police. But nope, that didn't satisfy them. The younger detective chimes in, how were things between you and your wife? As if I was on a date with a therapist. Fine, I think. Our relationship was okay. We had our fights like everyone else, but nothing major. And then came the question that floored me, Flaunatory. Is there anyone who might want revenge on you for something from your past? Seriously? Like I'm some mob boss with enemies. I honestly told them I couldn't think of anyone, but they stared at me like I was a killer from a Netflix documentary. The whole interrogation was pure torture. Every second felt like an hour. I felt cornered, like a rat trapped with no way out. I was trying to explain that I was the victim here, for God's sake, not the criminal. But you know what? No one was listening. They'd already decided I was involved in this mess. And you know what made it all worse? My mother-in-law. Oh man, that woman was the queen of disdain. She started looking at me like I was covered in blood and had just confessed to killing her daughter. It was one of those looks that screamed, I always knew you were trash, and now I have proof. Her hatred grew stronger by the day, and if her glare could kill, I'd already be in a death row cell. That's when it hit me. All the rumors and gossip weren't just affecting my life. They were sealing my fate. Weeks passed, and guess what? Absolutely nothing. The police had zero leads. They were acting like this investigation was just a coffee break. Every day felt like a copy of the last. I went to work like a zombie, came home, and stared into the void. Meanwhile, the whole damn town had decided I was the bad guy. They were practically sharpening their pitchforks and lighting their torches, ready to come after me. I could see it in their eyes. My neighbors avoided me like I had murderer tattooed across my forehead. People whispered on the street as I walked by, thanks, social media, for turning my life into a nightmare. I wasn't sleeping at all. Every night, I'd lie awake, running through a million scenarios in my head. What the hell could have happened? And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. It all came back to Linda. She'd always been a little, let's say, out there. About a month before this all went down, she started acting weird. She'd say things that sent chills down my spine, stuff like, "You underestimate me, Dave. I'm tired of this damn life." It sounded like a line from a horror movie. I laughed it off at the time, thinking she was just stressed. Toddler, household chores, work. Who could have guessed those words were more than just nervous breakdown talk? And now she was gone. Gone with Kevin. How could that be normal? I was in total shock. Sure, you could chalk it up to coincidence if it weren't for one evening that changed everything. One night, I was going through her old messages on her phone. Not that I'm a big fan of snooping, but at that moment, I was grasping at straws. And that's when I stumbled upon a strange conversation. At first, it seemed like it was with some old friend, but the more I read, the more my brain started buzzing. The name was Alex. Who the hell was Alex? I'd never heard of him. This Alex clearly wasn't just a friend, and their messages were way too personal. I was staring at the texts, feeling my blood freeze in my veins. She was complaining to him about everything. About life, about me, about how tired she was. Like, seriously? What was I supposed to think? And then I saw something that knocked the wind out of me. It would be easier if someone just disappeared. What the hell? My mind exploded. Everything I'd ever known felt like a lie. This wasn't just a crisis or some family drama. Linda had been planning something. And this Alex guy, he was her partner in crime. The whole kidnapping thing, it wasn't random. It was all a setup. It became crystal clear. I wasn't just a guy being accused of murder. I was a pawn in someone's twisted game. Linda had vanished, leaving me with this mess, and I hadn't even seen it coming. And the craziest part? I thought she was just stressed. Like it happens to everyone, right? But no, this was something much bigger. So I'm on the verge of a nervous breakdown, and the police have basically forgotten about me. They didn't care anymore. Oh, come on, Dave, your family just vanished. It happens. What the hell? Was I supposed to sit back and watch while the whole town branded me a lunatic? Hell no. I decided to take action. I had nothing to go on. Well, almost nothing except for those damn messages from Alex. But one thing I knew for sure, Linda was up to her neck in this. She'd orchestrated the whole kidnapping thing, and like an idiot, I ended up being the star of her soap opera. So I did what any normal, wrongfully accused man would do. I hired a private investigator. Yep, guys, this isn't some movie. This is real life. $1,500 up front, and I had a guy tracking Linda's every move. A few days passed, and I started thinking the PI was just burning through my cash while sipping tequila at a bar. You know, typical scam. But no, he came back with so much information that my head nearly exploded from disbelief. Linda was alive and living in another state, and not in some neighboring town, but way the hell out in a state I hadn't even thought about. And then the real kicker. The PI handed me photos. Picture this, my kidnapped wife casually strolling through a shopping mall with Kevin, like it was just another day. She looked completely happy, holding little shopping bags like she just bought some new underwear on sale. And Kevin? He looked fine, normal, you know, like nothing had happened. Where the hell was all the panic and terror I'd been living through for weeks? Oh yeah, it was all in my head. I didn't even know how to react to it. At first, I just stared at the photos. My wife, alive and well. She hadn't just taken our son. She was living it up in another state. And me? I was drowning in this mess, suffocating under the accusations, while people around me thought I was a murderer. This was so messed up, I couldn't even find the words. My first instinct was to run to the police with these photos and show them that their kidnapping theory was just a load of crap. But then I realized, what's the point? These guys had written me off long ago as some psycho. They'd already decided I was guilty, and honestly, they didn't give a damn about what was really going on. Even if I brought them pictures of Linda dancing on a beach with a cocktail in one hand and Kevin in the other, they'd just roll their eyes and say, "Dave, you're seeing things." I understood one thing. I was on my own now. Linda wanted to make me the scapegoat. Fine, we'd play by her rules. But this was going to end on my asterisk terms. Faced with a dilemma, go to the police where they already thought I was a maniac, or take matters into my own hands. I chose the latter. I realized that playing by someone else's rules was for losers. If Linda wanted to set me up so I'd rot in jail for a crime I didn't commit, then I'd have to play her game, but on my own terms. It was time to put on a show, and this one would be a nightmare for her. So I got in touch with a journalist from a major news outlet who, as they say, was looking for a scoop. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of shark I needed. Let's call him Chuck. A typical dirt digger who'd rake through anything for views. And you know what the best part was? The headline we came up with together was like a bomb ready to blow up the internet. Wife stages her own child's kidnapping to frame husband. Pure fire, right? People would lose their minds over a story like that. We arranged for an exclusive interview, and I'll be honest, I prepared for it like it was the most important battle of my life. I gathered everything. The photos, the text messages from that bastard Alex, Linda's creepy messages about how life with you is hell, and cherry on top, the photos of her in another state, shopping happily with our son while I was stuck in this shitstorm. The next day, guess what? The whole damn country saw her face on TV. And it wasn't just an expose. It was a public flogging so brutal, Linda must have been sobbing into a pillow. Honestly, I even felt a bit satisfied, like she finally got what she deserved. People were in shock. Seriously, I didn't expect such a reaction. The internet exploded. Comments poured in like a rainstorm. How could a mother do this to her child just to frame her husband? That was the question of the day. Actually, the question of the week. Guys wrote to me, "Dude, you're a legend." Finally, someone exposed women like her. Women were just as furious. This woman is a monster. How could anyone manipulate their child for revenge? A few people even offered to start a GoFundMe for me, but you know what mattered most? Linda was destroyed in front of the whole country. All her plans fell apart like a house of cards. She wanted to wreck my life, frame me, and leave me without my son or my reputation. But it turned out the opposite. Now, she was the one being plastered on the news as the ultimate villain. And, as they say, there was no way for her to come back from that. The news spread across the country faster than a viral cat video. Seriously, this was one of those stories that every damn platform, from morning shows to TikTok, couldn't stop talking about. People went nuts. Everyone wanted to weigh in. And why not? A family drama with betrayal and a public takedown was prime fuel for social media. Linda, of course, tried to hide. I don't know what she was thinking, that no one would find her, or that this whole thing would just blow over. Oh no, sweetheart. Not this time. The moment her face hit the news, she became the most wanted woman in the country. You can't just disappear after a scandal like that as if nothing happened. The public was out for blood. Seeing those news segments made people demand justice. I wouldn't be surprised if someone was raising money for a bounty to catch her. The comments on social media were brutal. "This devil in a dress deserves life in prison," women wrote. Their anger so intense it was like Linda had stolen their last dime. The guys weren't any gentler. Finally, someone called out one of these fake women. "Dave, you're a hero." It was like I'd become the poster boy for every wronged man out there who had ever suffered at the hands of an ex. Every divorced guy now saw me as their personal savior. And yeah, my life started to change fast. Now, when I walked down the street, people didn't look at me with disdain. They looked at me with respect. A few even asked to take pictures with me, like I was some kind of superhero who had unmasked a villain live on air. I even caught myself thinking, seriously? Me, the same Dave who a few weeks ago was walking around like a ghost, is now considered a legend? But that was just the surface. The glamour, if you will. What was really going on? I was still broken. My life was flipped upside down like a car crash on the highway. Kevin was still with Linda, and I had no idea when or how I'd get my son back. All those likes, comments, and words of support, they were like a Band-Aid on an open wound. Yeah, it helps for a bit, but the mess is still there. Every night, I'd come home, sit on the couch, and think about how this might never truly be over. But one thing was for sure. Linda couldn't hide anymore. Public opinion was not on her side, and no matter how hard she tried to disappear, she was doomed, and I just sat there, waiting for the moment when it would all come crashing down. They caught Linda a week later, and you know where? In some tiny town near the Mexican border. Yep, she really thought she could hide like some fugitive in a movie. Of course, Linda, you're such a mastermind, pack your bags and try to slip across the border like you're in some low-budget action flick. But guess what? This is real life, not a movie, and in real life, you get caught eventually. They nabbed her in grand style, flashing lights, sirens, the whole shebang, just like in the movies she must have watched too much of. They even sent me photos. Linda looked like she wasn't just fleeing to Mexico, but leading an army of panicked Martians. Total meltdown. And then came the trial. Now, that was the show I'd been waiting for. Popcorn in hand, front row seat. When they dragged her into the courtroom, I couldn't help but smirk. Honestly, she looked like a cornered animal, totally defeated. Her face was a mask of sheer panic, like she was about to be devoured. And you know what? Justice had finally decided to play its hand. The cops found everything, and I mean everything. Her plans, her texts with that scumbag Alex, her financial scams. Turns out, Linda had been twisting the finances for over a year, so much so she could have entered a competition for top con artist of the year. The trial was so one-sided that even her lawyers, yeah, the guys she hired with a fortune to save her ass, didn't bother defending her. What could they do? There were mountains of evidence against her, and any cry of, "this isn't true," would have sounded so ridiculous that even a cat wouldn't believe it. The judge handed down the verdict, and you know what? It was the best moment of my life. I didn't just get custody of Kevin. This wasn't just, hooray, justice is served. No, this was real vengeance. Linda was sentenced to several years in prison for fraud and trying to frame me. And I watched her face change as she realized there was no way out of this pit. It was the ultimate triumph, watching her entire messed up plan collapse under her feet. She wanted to destroy my life, but in the end, it all blew up in her face. And you know what? I don't regret a second of it. So here I am now, living alone with Kevin. Linda, she's rotting in prison, and honestly, I hope she stays there for a long time. Seriously, she deserves every year they gave her. As they say, karma works in mysterious ways, but it never fails. This whole show she orchestrated came back to bite her hard, and me, I'm not that naive guy anymore who thought life was all rainbows and strolls in the park with your kid. When you go through the kind of shit I did, the first thing you lose is faith in people. Now, I look at everyone with suspicion, like anyone could stab me in the back at any moment. Subconsciously, I'm always waiting for someone to pull another stunt. Because, well, if your own wife can pull off something as grand as staging a kidnapping and framing you for it, then anyone's capable of pulling some crazy shit, right? So yeah, trust is pretty much at the bottom of the ocean right next to the Titanic, but you know what? I'm glad this all happened. Yeah, it sounds weird, but it's true. All this madness taught me something important. People aren't always what they seem. The ones we think are closest to us sometimes hide such a dark side that even horror movies pale in comparison. And I'm not talking about petty grievances or little misunderstandings. I'm talking about real, consuming darkness that only comes out when you least expect it. But the most important thing about this story, I won. I survived when it felt like the whole world was collapsing on my head, when everyone, from the police to my neighbors, thought I was a psycho. Linda wanted to ruin my life? Ha! Take that, sweetheart. Now you're in prison, and I'm free, living with my son, who'll eventually understand just what kind of hell we went through. My story isn't just some family drama or a tale of a wife trying to frame her husband. It's a warning to anyone who thinks they can destroy someone's life and get away with it. No, folks, that's not how it works. If you play with fire, be ready to get burned. And Linda? She's a perfect example of that. Let everyone remember that if they ever think of pulling something like this. So, what's next? I keep living my life. My son is growing up, and I'm doing everything I can to give him a normal childhood, despite all the chaos we went through. And while I sometimes feel like I've become harder and colder than I used to be, I know one thing for sure. I'll never let anyone do that to me again.